Welcome to Internally Guided Life, a podcast to help you unlock a life of balance, fulfillment, and joy. I'm Kayla Sweet, and together we are going to have fun and create change from the inside out. I'm so glad you're here. Hello and welcome. This is the first episode of the Internally Guided Life podcast. I'm Kayla Sweet. I am a life coach who helps high-performing women build more balance and joy into their lives. And I am so excited to be here today. I have been dreaming of this podcast for years, and it is finally a reality thanks to some technical support and assistance from my husband. I'm just thrilled to be here with you all. So for this first episode, given that today, as I'm recording, it is the last day of 2023. Tomorrow is the first day of 2024, a new year. And there's always a lot of things that come up for people as we go into the new year, as a year closes. There's a lot of conflict there. So I want to dive into that today for this first episode. So we're going to dive into New Year goals, resolutions, intentions, and reflections. All of the things that come up when we contemplate what the new year means to us. We're going to dive into the challenges that arise, and we are going to talk about the ways that we sometimes unintentionally set ourselves up to be hurt and disappointed at this time of the year, especially around goal setting and dreaming of our resolutions, the promises we're going to make to ourselves for the year to come. But before we dive into all of that, I want to give you a little more information about me and about this podcast as we get started on this journey together. I'm incredibly excited to be here. So, to start out, I really want to talk about what internally guided life means to me and what I hope it will become for you in your life as you listen. This is a podcast that is meant to really support you on your journey to finding more balance, fulfillment, and joy in your life. To me, living a life that is internally guided is about dedicating ourselves to the process of human growth, healing, and evolution, something that we commit ourselves to consciously and intentionally. It means that we recognize the power of inner work, and we know that we're going to keep growing as we go, that there's no perfect, that there's no end goal, but that this is valuable and important work that we get to do together. So this podcast is about creating change, essentially, in our lives, in the world, but starting within ourselves, change from the inside out. Because all change that happens in the world starts within individual people, individual souls, each of us on our individual journeys as we come together, create huge impacts in the world, and the world needs that now. We need so much hope and healing, and that starts with each and every one of us. So that is what this podcast is for. It's because I believe that each of us has the responsibility to engage in this work, to do our inner healing, and to show up fully and participate in the healing of the world at large. Because we can't do that when we're just surviving, when we're barely getting through the day, when we're not reaching our potential. Nothing on a larger scale can change. We have to start here within each of ourselves. And the best part about this is it is the most accessible place to start. It's within reach for every single person. So I want this podcast to be somewhere that we can land together as we navigate this messy human life, this human existence that is so challenging and beautiful. I want this podcast to be a place that we can really explore practical things that we can do to thrive in our lives, and also to really dive into some of the complexity and challenge of being human in a real and raw way. This is going to be unfiltered. I'm going to very minimally edit this. I want it to be an experience that feels authentic for all of you. So sometimes, like today, this podcast will just be me talking about an idea and walking through something that I've found meaning from, maybe telling a story, unpacking a topic, and just sharing my thoughts and experiences and information I've learned with you all. And when the episodes go this way, it isn't meant to be one-way information sharing. It might come across that way when you're listening because you can't speak back to me. But I want this to be a conversation with each and every one of you. So I want to invite you, as you listen, to join me in my different communities on social media and on my website. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram as Internally Guided Coach. I'm on LinkedIn as Kayla Sweet, and I want to hear from you. I want you to join me on this journey and give me your feedback, send me your questions, engage in a dialogue with me. Just because I have a certain opinion on something doesn't mean that's fact or that it aligns with your experience. And the only way I'm going to grow as I go through this process is to hear from all of you and to make this a community. So that's my request of you as we go forward with this podcast. Now, some of the other episodes, I am planning on inviting guests and doing more interview, conversation style, diving into topics with other people so that you can have that interaction and hear from others, not just me. Hear the way that they see the world and how their experiences have shaped them and the practical advice they have to help you improve your life. So, no matter what we're doing, whether we have guests or it's just me solo, the goal is for us to connect and grow and thrive together. And we're going to have fun and we're going to laugh. And you'll probably hear me laughing at myself because I tend to make jokes that other people don't think are funny, but I do. So you'll get to enjoy all of that with me on this show. So that's a little bit about this podcast and what you're getting in for as you join me on this ride. And before we dive into today's topic, I also wanted to tell you a little bit about me and what brought me here. So some of you maybe have engaged with me already. Maybe you're already in my communities on social media or signed up for my email list, or maybe not. Maybe you just found this podcast or somebody sent it to you. Maybe it's just happenstance that you're listening right now. So if that's the case and you have no exposure of me whatsoever, I want to give you a sense of who I am and help you know me so that you can understand where these perspectives and opinions and stories are coming from. So I'm Kayla Sweet, and I'm just a person who really loves people and believes in the good of people and the potential of people. I'm also someone who is super aware of the challenges and struggles that we face, both individually and as a human species. There is so much that we have to overcome and so much that we have already that I think we sometimes forget. And I'll never minimize the challenges. I'll never minimize the things that are going on that are hurting people, where there is suffering and struggling, where I myself am struggling. I want to bring it all out and put it into the light because that is part of this human journey. It's not meant to be perfect and pretty and clean and Instagram filtered. It's meant to be messy, and that is part of who I am. I am somebody that knows that the struggles are what make us who we are, and the challenges that we grow through are what create just this abundance of beauty in the world. So this is kind of my perspective on life. I am someone that just really loves to grow and learn. I love to laugh and joke and have fun. And I want to have fun with you all in this space, so I hope that you're ready for that. In all seriousness, though, I am a person who ultimately is committed to the healing of our world and to community and to empowering women. And I know that this work starts within each of us, within you and within me. I want to empower you to go bravely within yourself and come out stronger, glimmering, sparkling, and shining with your own personal brand of magic. Because I believe in magic. I think we all have some to share with the world. But sometimes society, expectations, conditioning, trauma, all of this stuff just muddies it up and makes it feel less accessible to us. And I want to bring that back out. I want us to excavate some of that together. But on a little bit more of a personal level, I'm just going to give you a very brief history of me so that you know what brought me here and what perspective I'm speaking from, because it's important to know the context, right, whenever we're listening to the opinions of someone else. So I am one of 5 children that was raised by a single mother in the Midwest, very poor. We did not have money growing up, and that was just the norm for us. Life had its challenges. And from the very early days, I always knew life wasn't meant to be all sunshine and butterflies, and yet I've always been very optimistic. So one thing that is important to know about me is that we lost my father when I was only 4 years old to suicide. So this is why my mom had to raise me and my 4 siblings all by herself. And although I don't remember that time of my life, I remember the years that came after. I remember my mother and us kids. We didn't always have the bills paid, and we didn't always have food to eat, but we had an abundance of love in our home, and we had each other. And I'm so grateful for where I started, for everything I've gone through that's brought me to this point, that formed the foundation of who I am. So yeah, there was struggle in my early years, and we won't get into all of the details today because I have really fun things that I want to talk to you all about. But I will say that somehow, through challenges, personally, family-wise, socioeconomically, all of these hurdles I had to overcome, I've ended up here today, which is a beautiful place to be, a place I'm very grateful for. It's been a long and meandering journey of healing, but now I'm surrounded by a strong community, and I have the most brilliant people in my corner. I'm married to a wonderful man, and I'm running a business that brings me joy. I have created something that I never thought was possible for myself, from absolutely nothing but optimism, will, and a lot of inner work. So just a little more information to give you a bit more context. I was a first-generation college student. I am educated at that level. I put myself through school. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. Probably not surprising if you haven't picked up on it. I am fascinated by human beings, and I've spent my entire life trying to get to know and understand people so that I can support them, empower them, and love them better, and love myself better. I have worked in direct services and community mental health for many years. I've served as a leader, as a manager, I've worked in human resources. I have done so many interesting and fun things, and all in the service of helping people, all in the service of empowering people, and just walking alongside people, to be honest. I mean, whenever you go out to try to help somebody, you really end up being the one that gets helped. I think all of the people in the helping professions know this, but it's beautiful to experience it. And while I was going through some of these different jobs in community mental health, I put myself through my master's degree. I got my master's degree in consciousness and transformative studies. That's something I would love to talk to you all more about on a later podcast, because that was a beautiful experience. And just to give you a little context on what the heck that means, it was an interdisciplinary program that was founded on the principles of psychology, philosophy, and the new sciences. So it was a really, really powerful transformative program. And the intention of it was for us to change within ourselves so that we could change the world. So That's a very brief description, and you're probably still like, what the heck is she talking about? We'll get into it later. But that degree was extremely fulfilling. And one of the things that brought me into the coaching realm, because that was where I was introduced to coaching as a professional occupation. It wasn't something that I was aware of in much detail before that, what it takes to walk alongside someone on their healing process. So that's a little bit about me, the very brief version. There's a lot of messy parts that I left out, but hopefully on a later episode I can fill you in on some of the fun and adventurous stories of my life. But now that you know who I am and why I'm here and what I want to do with this podcast, let's dive into our topic for today. So today I want to talk about the new year. It's the last day of 2023. That brings up a lot of stuff for people. People get really antsy around these times that we tend to reflect and just imagine what's possible, but also think about what we did or didn't accomplish over a year. Think about the passing of time, thinking about what we want from our life that we don't have, thinking about what we're grateful for. There is so much that comes up for folks as they're navigating the end of a year and the beginning of a new one. And for me, I love this time of the year. I am a very sentimental person, and for me, any marker of time, whether it's the new year or a birthday or an anniversary, I relish in those moments. Because for me, it's an opportunity to reflect and to see what growth has happened, what healing has happened, what kind of adventures life has taken me on that I never would have imagined, never could have dreamed of. And so I love it. I love going through that process of reflection and honoring and offering gratitude to what has been. And I also love the turning of a new page, the new year. I love dreaming. I love dreaming about what could be. What do I want? At this point in my life, life is a playground. I'm just trying to figure out what I can do next because there are endless possibilities. And I want to experience so many things in this human life. So that's what the new year means to me. It means honoring and offering gratitude around everything that has been, everything that's transpired over the past year, over the past decade, all of these moments in our lives that we don't always take the time to pause and reflect on. I like to stop in these transitional times and reflect. And on the other hand, I like to dream. I'm excited about what is to come. I am somebody that's very intentional about being present in the moment, enjoying where I'm at and what I have. And I'm still a dreamer. I still like to imagine what could be. I don't like to get lost in the anxiety of all of the negative what ifs, but I like to go down a path of positive what ifs. What if this next year is amazing? I think it's gonna be. I've got a hunch. I was just telling my husband the other day that, I had a lot of rough years starting out early in life, and I think the universe is balancing the scales now, and that the years are just gonna keep getting better for a while. I've already paid my dues, so to speak. Anyways, that's a little bit of what the new year means to me. Now, it means different things to different people. And for some people, it's just another day and they don't even really think twice about it. And that's fine too. But I was doing a little bit of research before I started recording for today. And I found an article in Time magazine from 2022, so just last year. And this article said that only 8% of people, and I have no idea where this statistic came from, so, take all statistics with a grain of salt, but it sounds accurate, and it was in Time magazine, so we're gonna go with it. But only 8% of people stick to their New Year resolutions all year. And 80% of people have given them up by February. We're only making it a month, guys. Oh, goodness. So, looking at these statistics and thinking about how many people do take the time to set New Year's resolutions and to really try to make a habit change, a routine change, set a goal, do something that's important to them, and then looking at these staggering numbers of people that have given them up by February, clearly something is going wrong. We aren't doing this right, folks. So if only 8% of people are sticking to their New Year's resolution, I'm thinking we've got this process a little backwards, or we're just not engaging with it in a way that's really helpful. Or I believe more people would be successful and able to stick to their resolutions all year. So I also started to look up on the internet reasons. I went into an internet, rabbit hole, I think is what they call them, while I was looking up some stuff for this episode. And I was looking up the reasons why the internet thinks that people's resolutions fail. And I saw a lot of stuff I just didn't agree with. I saw things like procrastination and lack of motivation and lack of discipline and failure to plan. And I call BS. I don't think that people aren't sticking to their goals because they're not motivated enough. I don't think they're not achieving what they want because they don't have the discipline or they didn't make a good enough plan. It just doesn't sit right with me. So it got me thinking, if none of that is true, if none of that is the reason why we are not being successful in our New Year's resolutions, then what is the reason? What is the reason that people are not sticking to the resolutions that they're setting? And if you're not familiar with a New Year's resolution, you probably are, but if you're not, these are essentially the goals and promises that people make to themselves, the commitments they make to themselves. So the thought of 80% of people not sticking to a commitment they made to themselves really makes me wonder how many commitments they've stuck to for other people that got in the way. I think that is a barrier often, more so than lack of motivation or lack of discipline, but like a conflict in what's being asked of them by the family, by the world, by their friends, and what they want for themselves. And we are just all too often to sacrifice the commitments we make to ourselves in favor of commitments that we're making to other people, to organizations, etc. That's just not okay. I think we can do better. So we're going to dive into this a little bit more. One question that I thought was that maybe if our resolutions are failing, it's because they just aren't good resolutions to begin with. Maybe we aren't good at setting realistic goals, expectations, commitments that are aligned with what our souls really want and need. Maybe the reason we aren't achieving these resolutions we're setting is because they just really don't matter as much as we think they do. Maybe we are setting surface level goals and resolutions that are all the things that we think our society would want us to want, or that we think would make us happier because a commercial told us so, or that we think would make us appear successful. All of these things that just aren't really aligned with what actually matters in our human existence, but we're so often tricked into believing. I don't know. What do you think? You'll have to message me. I wish this was something where I could hear your answers right now, but think on this for a minute as you're listening. Do you think we're just setting bad resolutions? Why do you think this is? That 80% of people are not sticking with their resolutions past February. So, in my mind, as I was thinking through this, I thought, if you want resolutions that don't fail, by fail I just mean you don't stick to it for whatever reason, we've got a few options. And essentially I came up with two that made the most sense to me. And the first is, we could stop setting resolutions, period. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more in a second. So that's one option. Just stop doing this to ourselves. Stop setting ourselves up for this disappointment and hurt. Or we could create better resolutions that are deeply meaningful, connected to our values, and are kind and realistic to ourselves, that are aligned with our lives. So that's the second option. So going back to the first one, I want to unpack each of these. If we stop setting resolutions, period, what could that look like? What could that mean? Now, in full transparency, I have not set New Year's resolutions in years. This is something I used to do when I was younger, probably like in my teen years, in my 20s. And I don't know, at some point in the last couple of years, I just realized they weren't really useful for me anymore. It wasn't something that I was benefiting from. So what I've been doing in lieu of New Year's resolutions, because I mentioned I like this time of year. I like reflecting, I like dreaming, I like setting goals in general. But when it comes to the new year, I really like to use the time to reflect, as I've mentioned, and I like to set intentions for the year to come rather than goals. And words are finicky, so these might mean something else to you than what they mean to me. But to me, a goal is something specific and concrete that we can easily measure, that other people could look at us and know we've done. So, lose 20 pounds in 6 months. That could be a goal. An intention might be to love ourselves better, to listen to our bodies, to intentionally show up for ourselves every single day. Just lands different, doesn't it? So I've been setting these intentions each year, asking myself, what do I want to embody in the year to come? How do I want to love? How do I want to learn? What ways do I want to be brave? How can I connect with people in a way that's meaningful and fulfilling and true? Those are the types of questions I ask myself. And I set my intention for the year to be more loving, to be more brave, to be more open. This last year, I really had an intention to be brave. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to show up and be seen regardless of what anybody thought. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job, but I think I could still do better. That's one of the reasons I started a podcast, because it's a little bit more vulnerable than a 90-second video to talk to you all for any extended period of time. So if you decide to go with this option, you decide to stop setting resolutions and just spend some time reflecting and setting intentions, what would that look like for you? What would it look like to set aside some time to reflect on the year that's passed and to dream of the year to come? Do you want to do that alone? Do you want to do that with others? Are you someone that likes to meditate? You want to talk through it in conversation with a spouse or a loved one or a friend. How would you engage in this? Would you journal, write it down, make a piece of art, write a song, write a poem? I like to write poems sometimes. They're probably not very good, but they're good to me. That's all that matters. But yeah, if you think that this path, if you just want to toss the resolutions out the window, what could you replace them with? What would feel right to you? How could you practice gratitude at this time? And I know gratitude is like becoming cliche because it's so highly talked about. And I think we can sometimes wrap up like gratitude and optimism into things that are really harmful and toxic, like toxic positivity, and denying the messiness of human existence and denying suffering and pain and invalidating people and invalidating our own emotions and all of this. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the type of gratitude that makes you humble and grateful that you're here. Because no matter what challenges we've gone through, what pains, what suffering, what moments of beauty, if you're listening to this, you're still here. And that is an accomplishment in this day and age. To just keep getting up and going requires a lot of strength and resilience. And you can be grateful to yourself for that. Another thing you could do while you are reflecting and setting your intentions is to use this time to explore your values, beliefs, and thoughts. This is something I've been working with a lot in my own personal work this last year. And I think that the new year is a good time to get clear on these things, because we can so easily just get wrapped up in the day-to-day and lose sight of what actually matters. I think this is why we set bad resolutions, because we've forgotten what we care about. We're distracted, we're busy, we're stressed. So if you have a moment, if you have some time, 20 minutes, an hour, a day, whatever would be useful to you, what if you explored what matters to you now, at this point in your life? I think this is something we have to visit regularly because it changes. The things I value and believe now are way different than the things I valued and believed when I was in my 20s, in my teens. They're meant to grow and evolve and change as we move into new stages and phases of life. But if we aren't visiting them, if we aren't visiting our values, our intentions, our aspirations, what matters to us in our lives, what we want from our human existence, this experience, if we aren't visiting it, we forget. And we don't have clarity, and we just keep running and we don't know what we're running towards. So that's one path you could take. Get clear on your values. Identify what you believe. Bring some self-awareness to your thoughts. What are you thinking regularly? What are you thinking about yourself? It's another area that I feel like we constantly have room to grow and heal. There's so many negative and unhelpful and unsustainable dialogues that just run on autopilot in our brains. And it doesn't have to be that way. So once you bring some awareness to it, you can start to shift those things. And we can talk more about how in another episode. But I'm going to move on to the next option. So the second option of the two options I came up with to solve this problem of people not sticking with their resolutions is to create New Year's resolutions that are meaningful, that matter, that are connected to your values and are aligned with your life. As we make these goals, promises, or commitments to ourselves, we have the opportunity to align them with what we really want and need from life. What really matters. So even if you chose this path and you're going to stick with the resolutions, you want to make these commitments, you like having this, new page, new calendar year to set some commitments and promises to yourself. I think that's beautiful. But be really serious about this. Don't break the promises you make to yourself. It's a breach of trust. When we constantly tell ourselves that we are going to do things that we don't follow through on, we are letting ourselves down again and again and again. And that kind of self-betrayal, that'll erode trust with yourself. That'll make navigating life really hard because we need to have our own backs on this journey. It's not always going to be the case that other people have our backs. Hopefully you have people that do, but we don't all, and we don't always have that. But we are always with ourselves. So if you are going to set a resolution, you are going to make a promise to yourself, you better be really clear on how you're going to keep that promise, because you are worth it and you should not be lying to yourself. Another thing to consider when you're setting this resolution is how can you be both realistic and kind while being aspirational? Obviously, we want to push ourselves. We want to grow. We want to be challenged. We want to change. But how can we do it in a way that's kind and loving? Because I think sometimes the goals we set really just become another form of self-torture. Like, if you say you want to lose 20 pounds and then you don't, you feel like you failed, feel like you're not strong enough, not motivated enough. And you know what? Maybe the weight was never the thing you needed to lose. Maybe you needed to lose the weight of other people's expectations. Maybe you needed to lose the weight of what society tells you you're supposed to look like. Maybe the weight was never the problem, but you set that as a promise to yourself, and now you feel like you've broken that promise and you feel bad. And you have another reason to be hard on yourself and mean to yourself. And that's just not fair. I don't think we should be doing that to ourselves, you guys. Yeah. So if you're choosing to create meaningful resolutions, here are my tips. I think it is important to, first off, be clear on what matters. What matters most in your life? Is it your family, your friends, your creative outlets? Is it love? Is it honesty? Is it giving back to the community? Is it healing from your past? What matters the most to you right now? What is the big thing that's calling you and asking for more attention? That is a place to start. How can you bring forth a resolution from that place that really is in alignment with what matters most to you? Then, once you have that clear, just do a quick check, a quick kindness check, and a quick reality check. Let's not set resolutions that are so impossible that we are going to give up on them after a month. Okay? Let's not put ourselves in situations to be disappointed and betrayed by our own inability to follow through with our promise. Let's set resolutions that are kind and that are realistic. Because if you set a resolution and you meet it early, you can set a new goal at any time during the year. You can keep pushing yourself. But if you set a resolution on day one of a year that has you feeling overwhelmed and bad about yourself by the end of the month, what good is that to anybody? What good is that to your spirit? It's not. It's not good. So, hopefully that gives you some things to think on as you just engage with this time of the year, the closing of a year, the beginning of a new year, whether that means something to you or not. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. I like to take any opportunity that I have to reflect and dream, but not everybody is that way, and that's totally fine. But I hope this gave you a new perspective, a new way to think about this time of the year and what it can mean and how we can dream into being something more beautiful for ourselves this next year. So, as we go into 2024, let's not keep doing things that don't work. Let's make a commitment to do something different. Let's choose to not torture and shame ourselves. But regardless of what path you choose, let's all be a little more loving and kind to ourselves and each other this year. I think that's all I have. So thank you for listening and joining me on this wild ride of my first podcast. It has been so much fun. I hope that you will connect with me on social media and let me know what you thought. Let's keep this conversation going. I cannot wait to talk to you soon. Bye. Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening. If you want more resources on thriving in your life or want details on working with me, check out my website at internallyguidedleadership.com or follow me on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at internallyguidedcoach. Be gentle with yourselves out there, and I'll talk to you next time.